Hi, I'm Matt Pike, and in this video I'll guide you through the modulation options and mod matrix of the MiniFreq, Arturia's unconventional hybrid synthesizer. We're going to look at how this carefully designed selection of modulation tools, intuitive mod matrix, and performance macros helps us exploit all the power this little synth has to offer. The MiniFreq features two LFOs with custom wave shapes, an ADSR envelope, a cycling envelope, velocity, aftertouch, and keyboard follow with various modes, an assignable mod wheel with a dedicated vibrato option, and two assignable macro sliders. So our modulation options are really extensive. That's not even factoring in the 4-lane modulation sequencer, which we'll cover in a separate video. Let's start with the envelope. This is the only modulation source in the MiniFreq which is hardwired to control elements of the synth. It will always control the VCA volume and can be routed to the filter via the envelope knob in the filter section. The envelope is the same one found in the Polybrute and can go from extremely tight and snappy to long and smooth. We have options to change the curves in the envelope settings menu, which can be accessed by the shortcut of holding Sound Edit, then pressing the envelope mode switch. This same shortcut process can be used to access the settings menu for all the modulation sources. In the envelope settings menu, we also have options to add velocity modulation of the envelope to its various sources, which is a great way to get extra dynamic into a patch quickly without using up the space in the mod matrix. Before we move on to the other modulation sources in the MiniFreq, let's look at where we will actually assign and make use of them. The mod matrix will hopefully look familiar to any MicroFreq users and has been expanded to include all the new mod sources and to have 3 pages of assignable mod destinations. Mod destinations are found along the top of the matrix and mod sources are down the side. We navigate around the matrix horizontally with the matrix knob and vertically by holding Shift and turning the matrix knob. When we find a modulation we want to assign, we have 2 options. Either click the matrix knob and then adjust the amount, then click to exit back to navigation. Or we can push and turn to make quick edits without leaving the navigation mode. To remove an assignment, you just have to click and hold the matrix knob for a few seconds until it blinks. Pitch 1 and 2, Wave 1, Timbre 1, and Cutoff are pre-assigned for speedy patching. But if you want to assign a mod destination, just hold the Assign button on the matrix, then wiggle the control you want to modulate. For instance here, we'll go for Shape 1. You can assign almost all of the rotary controls on the front panel, and also, if you hold the Assign button and turn the preset edit knob, some extra controls such as LFO amplitudes or the VCA, which are not available on the front panel. You can also assign a patch point on the matrix as a mod destination. Say for instance, I wanted to have velocity control the cycling envelope to timbre in this FM patch. If I hold the Assign button, then navigate to the patch point using the matrix knob, we can see it displayed as the destination on the screen. Now if I assign some velocity to it, we get some nice dynamic FM. To navigate through different pages of the assignable mod destinations, just hold Shift and press the assign buttons. You can see the assignments for that page show up on the screen. Now we've seen how to assign the modulators, let's take a look at the rest of them. The cycling envelope is somewhere between an LFO and an envelope, and may seem familiar to any modular users out there. It has three modes we can choose between: envelope, run, which behaves like a mono LFO and doesn't retrigger, and loop, which behaves like a looping envelope or polyphonic LFO and retriggers. Rise and fall control the shape of the envelope or LFO. We can change the shape of these by holding Shift while turning the knobs. Note that in envelope mode, we have the same two options we get in the main ADSR envelope, but in run or loop, we get a continuous curve, so we can create really snappy LFOs with ease. Hold sustain is a sustain level when in envelope mode. Or a hold time when in run or loop mode. We can also change when this hold takes place with the stage order options in cycling envelope settings, allowing us to create gaps between snappier LFO shapes. In these settings, we can also tempo sync the stages and choose the retrigger source, including having it retriggered by the LFOs, which can tie the modulations together really nicely. For instance, here, LFO 1 is triggering the cycling envelope, locking their movements together. Moving on to the LFOs, we have two available. They share the same features, and we choose which LFO we're controlling with the select switch. The rate control can be unsynced, or synced by clicking the knob. And the rate is displayed via the LEDs above the LFO section, which really speeds up the process of knowing which is which while tweaking a sound. If we hold Shift while turning the rate knob, we can also choose the retrigger options for the LFO, including turning it into a one-shot. Or having it re-trigger from the other LFO or cycling envelope, which is great for creating swung or complex modulation. We can choose the shape of the LFO with the wave knob. And as you can see, we have a bunch of options beyond the standard wave shapes, including this final option, Shaper. This is where we can use custom wave shapes or sequences for each of the LFOs. We have some presets we can quickly load in here to try out by holding Shift and turning the wave knob. You'll probably find you need to increase the rate of the LFO to use these custom shapes, as they're made up of multiple stages, as you'll see in a moment. To create our own custom shape, we can enter Shaper Edit mode by holding Shift and then pressing the LFO Select button. We use the sequencer steps and touch strips to edit the stages of our shaper, which can be up to 16 stages long, with each stage lasting 1 LFO cycle, hence us having to speed up the LFO before. If we press and hold the step we want to edit, we can set its level with the left slider and its curve with the right slider. We can also choose the shape of a step using the sequence length buttons to the right of the step buttons. The graphics underneath are the shape options. You can turn off a step by tapping it, and also tie steps together to create longer shapes by holding the first step and then tapping the step you want to tie up to. From an init shaper, you can really quickly get a pattern by wiggling the level touch strip and just painting along the step buttons. We can set the length of the shaper pattern by holding down the last step button on the right-hand side of the sequencer and pressing the step we want the pattern to finish on. Now we've seen how it all works, let's make something. If you like a shaper pattern, you can save it to one of the 8 user slots to recall later. To start this process, just hold Save and press the LFO button. When we're finished editing, we can close the Shaper Edit menu by pressing the LFO Select button again. So that's the LFOs. Now let's take a look at some special features of the final few modulation sources in the matrix. The first of these is the Velo Aftertouch, which is a single mod source for both velocity and aftertouch. You can also choose to only use one of them in the keyboard settings menu, for instance if you've already assigned velocity via envelope settings. Then we have mod wheel assignments and keyboard. Keyboard can have a few modes which can be selected from the settings menu, including a random mode which generates a random value on every key press. This is a great way of quickly getting either subtle or wild variation into a patch, like this patch for instance, which uses it to change the engine type of the oscillator on each note. Beyond the mod matrix and its modulation sources, we also have some extra modulation and performance options in the touch strip section of the synth. We choose the touch strip mode with these three buttons. The first mode has them act as a pitch bend and mod wheel. As well as assigning the mod wheel in the matrix, we can also turn it into a vibrato control to make use of the dedicated vibrato LFO by holding Shift and pressing the bend wheel button. We can adjust the vibrato LFO by holding the bend wheel button and using the left touch strip to change speed and right touch strip to change its depth. We can also assign these as mod destinations from the additional mod destinations list in the mod matrix. Hold Assign and use the preset edit knob as we discussed earlier. This means if we assign the vibrato amplitude in the matrix, we can use it even when it's turned off and not controlled by the mod wheel. For instance here, I'll turn it off, then control it with the other LFO. The second touch strip mode turns them into two macro controls. These macros can have 4 assignments, which we edit by holding Shift and pressing the macro button. We choose which macro to edit by touching its respective touch strip. Then, if we turn a knob in the UI, it not only assigns it, but also sets the macro offset amount. We can navigate the list of assignments using the preset edit knob. If we click on an empty assignment slot, we can add some additional mod destinations we get in the mod matrix. If we click on an existing assignment, we can edit its value. And we can click and hold to delete an assignment. One sneaky little trick we can do with these macros is to assign the macro itself as a mod destination in the mod matrix. So we're able to modulate up to 4 parameters with a single matrix assignment. The final touch strip mode controls the sequencer, so we'll cover that in the next video. So that's modulation in the Minifreak. Hopefully this video has shown you just how powerful the modulation options in this synth are, while remaining fast and intuitive to use. Make sure to head over to Arturia's YouTube channel to find our other deep dive tutorials on the Minifreak, to see what you can put all that modulation power to use on, and how to get the most out of this crafty little critter. And if you've enjoyed what you've just heard and seen, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.